So now, let's go over the steps. The first is A. Tells the person or group to stop committing present-time overts and to cease all attacks and suppressions so he, she, or they can get a case gain. In Scientology, an overt is a harmful act of omission or commission which would be considered destructive in some fashion. Stealing, lying, cheating, kicking the cat, all of these would be overts. Same with failing to act when one should, such as witnessing a crime and not calling the police. Where this step refers to getting a case gain, what that means is simply showing some kind of improvement or betterment. In Scientology, it's believed that so long as a person is committing overts or engaged in criminal activity, they're not going to be able to get any mental or spiritual benefit, and that is probably true enough. From the viewpoint of Scientology, step A is simple. Stop attacking Scientology or anyone else and just buckle down and do the rest of the steps. B. Requires a public announcement to the effect that they realize their actions were ignorant and unfounded, and stating, where possible, the influences or motivations which caused them to attempt to suppress or attack Scientology. Gets it signed before witnesses and published broadly, particularly to persons directly influenced or formerly associated with the former offender or offenders. The letter should be calculated to expose any conspiracy to suppress Scientology or the preclear or Scientologists if such existed. Now things get a little more interesting. In reading this, I can't help but think of the kind of anti-US statements that US prisoners in China and North Korea have been made to read on camera. Such statements always have to include how the prisoners acted out of ignorance, express sorrow over their misdeeds, and plead for forgiveness, usually while stating how evil, horrible, or unjust the United States is. Not only are such statements demanded, but they're then broadcast on video or television or radio so the maximum number of people can see and hear what the prisoner has to say. While anyone watching fully realizes that such statements are insincere at best, somehow the authoritarians who demand such things be done always seem to believe that if someone says something on their behalf, they must mean it. I'll also add that when I was working with the justice authorities in Scientology back in 2013 to try to do these steps, I wrote up a declaration following this step exactly, and it was received and approved by one person, only to be disapproved by the next in line. That new person, the Continental Justice Chief for the West US, didn't like how I'd written my statement. And by the time I had his approval, it said almost exactly the opposite of what I had initially written and had approved. So the process of getting approval on this and the other steps we'll be going over is capricious and wholly unpredictable. There are two subparts to step B. B1 requires that all debts owed to Scientology organizations or missions are paid off. Scientologists, as a general rule, do not go into debt to Scientology organizations since they're not lending institutions. But there is the matter of freeloader debts for staff members of these organizations who, for whatever reason, do not fulfill their contracts. Getting declared suppressive apparently is not a valid reason to get out of a freeloader debt. So, anyone who was a staff member or Sea Org member who's declared has to pay back whatever the Church of Scientology says it is owed for any free Scientology services received by the suppressive when they were a staff member. In some cases, this has run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So this step alone could take someone quite a bit of time all by itself. B2 may require that, subject to the approval of the International Justice Chief, an amends project suitable and commensurate with the severity and extent of the suppressive acts committed be completed before further A to E steps are undertaken. Before any such amends project is begun, the person must submit an amends project petition to the International Justice Chief, and stating what he proposes to do as amends. And this must be approved by the International Justice Chief to be considered valid. Evidence of genuine ethics change may be required before approval of the amends project is given. Examples of such evidence might be, depending upon the high crimes committed, the person has obtained an honest job, has paid off all debts owed to others, valid contributions have been made to the community, the person has totally ceased those actions for which he was declared, etc. It is also within the power of the International Justice Chief, when approving an amends project petition, to require, as a protector of the church and its tenets and membership, that such amends project be carried out entirely off any Scientology organization, mission, or network lines, and to require, before the amends project may be considered complete, extensive evidence over a protracted period of time that the person has, beyond any doubt, ceased his or her suppressive actions, has created no problems for the church or any member of the church in any way on any line, and has undertaken and completed an action which is clearly and undeniably of benefit to mankind. Now, this is the big step, the one that usually takes at least a few years to complete, and will almost certainly involve making large financial donations to Scientology, in addition to whatever other amends actions the suppressive person undertakes. One way an SP could be hit up for money is when someone wants to join the Sea Organization. New Sea Org members can't come in with big financial debt because they only make $45 a week and have no way to pay credit cards, student loans, mortgages, car payments, etc. If they don't have the resources to zero out their debt, then local Scientologists will often be hit up to help pay the debt off, or even buy them plane fare to fly out from wherever they are to the Sea Org base where they will be working. Scientologists doing amends such as this are often the first ones hit up for this money, and if they refuse, it could set them back months or years on their amends project. Amends projects are varied and different from person to person, and really could involve almost anything that would be considered charity work, preferably utilizing Scientology methods and principles to not just help people out, but to forward the good name of Scientology as well. For example, someone could go out and mentor teens, or help with illiteracy projects, or help organize food distribution at homeless shelters. Oddly enough, since the amends work has to be done totally off the church properties and without any help from the church, these kinds of amends actually tend to be things that are truly helpful to the community and society in general, unlike the kind of Scientology-centric activities that Scientologists tend to get involved in when they're doing local community work, whose main purpose is to only make Scientology itself look good. Depending on the suppressive person's location, the ease with which he or she can establish communication with the CJC and or IJC, and whether or not they approve of the things the SP is doing, it can take quite some time to complete this step. Ultimately, it's up to the whim of the Scientologists to decide when the amends is done. Once steps A and B are completed, the SP is now allowed to go into a Scientology organization so he can begin the next step. C. Requires training beginning at the lowest level of the bridge at their expense if executives in charge of training will have the person or the group members. All earlier training steps or courses the person did are basically canceled, so it's back to the beginning. I think the theory here is that if someone is doing things Scientology considers antipathetic to its causes, then the person never understood what it was all about in the first place. This idea, of course, assumes that Scientology is just and fair and good in all things, which we've seen is not the case at all. And of course, with all the re-releases of Scientology basic courses and books and lectures, all Scientologists in good standing were already sent back down to the bottom of the Scientology grade chart. So in a way, Scientology leader David Miscavige is treating everyone in Scientology as though they were a suppressive person. D. Makes a note of all of the above matters with copies of the statement and files in the ethics files of those concerned. E. Informs the International Justice Chief and forwards a duplicate of the original statements which show signatures. These last two are simply administrative steps to get the paperwork of everything that's been done filed in the proper places and sent to the IJC so he or she can give final approval and lift the suppressive person declare.